Hello and welcome to another episode of EKU Online's eCast series. EKU Online's mission is to change lives by providing access to affordable and high-quality degree programs in meaningful disciplines that positively impact our society. We thank you for joining us today. Today our guest is Professor James Pennington, Assistant Professor in the Department of Government. He is a full equity partner at Bluegrass Law Group, received his bachelor's degree in political science from EKU, and his Juris Doctorate from the University of Kentucky's College of Law. This is his third year teaching in a tenure track position. Welcome, Professor Pennington. I was told that you were actually a student of Dr. Lynette Noblet, chair of the department. Is that true? And if so, how does it feel to now be on the faculty with her as a peer?
Yes, Steve, it is true, and you can call me James. And I would actually qualify and not say peer, I would say mentor as well. Not only her, but Dean Ziegler, Professor Parker, folks who were my mock trial coaches when I was a student at EKU. And the feeling would be awesome, fortunate and blessed. I look at myself as hopefully an eternal colonel, so.
Very good. Well, James, you work in the Department of Government where you teach a number of courses in the paralegal field. Would you please tell us exactly what a paralegal is and how they function in an attorney's office?
Absolutely. A paralegal is a term of art, but in the law setting, you may hear legal assistant, legal secretary, office manager, caseworker, case manager. All of those are going to be synonymous with what a paralegal is going to do in a law office. And it's everything from writing to researching. And researching can be researching the law. Sometimes it can be researching people, whether you're looking at social media presence, doing background checks on folks. But they're an integral part of the practice of law.
Okay. What are the essential skill sets that paralegals typically bring to the table?
Like I just said, research, writing skills, but I think above all, you have to think like an attorney. You have to have that deductive reasoning, thought process, critical thinking, things we emphasize with our QEP, looking at a problem. I'll tell kind of a funny joke, and I think it'll outline the role of a paralegal. If you ask an accountant, hey, what's 2 + 2? The accountant's going to say 4. Oh, that's easy. But if you ask an attorney, what's 2 + 2? The response is going to be, what do you want it to equal? Lawyers operate in gray area. So paralegals have to navigate that gray area. You're not only making arguments for your client, but you're anticipating what the other side is going to argue. So thinking, writing, researching, all integral parts and skills required to be a paralegal. And you have to be a people person. As an attorney, the last thing you want to do is have an attorney, or as an attorney, have a paralegal who, turns a client away or doesn't present him or herself well to a client. So you have to have some people and communications, interpersonal skills as well.
Okay, thank you. Do paralegals spend any time in the courtroom, or do they strictly work behind the scenes?
Well, if you had asked me that question before March, I might have had a different response, because right now attorneys aren't spending a lot of time in court. Be that as it may, yes, paralegals are a part of the trial process. Now, trials are few and far between, now, but they're doing kind of the behind the scenes things. If you're showing a PowerPoint presentation to a jury, the paralegal may be operating the computer and running the PowerPoint. If there's a video or some tech things, you're needing to play a 911 call and some of those tech support things, paralegals are going to be integral in that. Sometimes it's the paralegal there just taking notes and making sure things are going as expected. Because when attorneys are in the heat of the battle, sometimes you get tunnel vision and you need someone kind of on the sidelines taking notes and making sure you're covering everything you need. So yes, they are integral part in the courtroom setting as well.
Well, let's take the example, unfortunately, of divorces, a very real issue in our society, though an unfortunate one. What kinds of things might a paralegal do in a divorce case that came up?
Everything from interviewing the client or prospective client when they come in to start talking about the divorce. They may be gathering information, financial information, insurance information, just the nuts and bolts of information you have to exchange and disclose in a divorce. You know, like I was talking about with the background check aspect, I have my legal assistants look on social media to see what has the other side posted or not posted, what sort of pictures are there. You know, there's the old saying, once you post it on the internet, it's there forever, and a good paralegal is going to find that. Mm-hmm. And even on the back end, everything from, you know, answering client questions, because one thing with the divorce, and I'm glad you used that example, that's one of my firm's major practice areas. If there are children involved and children are small when the divorce starts, that could be a client for 18 years. So there's going to be maybe a lot of follow-up, a lot of things. So, you know, the paralegal a lot of times holds their hand through the process.
Okay, very good. What's the current demand for paralegals in the field now, and what's the future outlook for that profession?
The demand's high. Now, when I say the demand's high, I want to, you know, go back to one of my initial responses that the term paralegal, you know, may be synonymous with legal secretary, office manager, legal clerk, and some of those other positions, whatever hat you're going to wear in the law office setting. But the outlook is promising. Lawsuits aren't going down, cases aren't going away, and if anything, with our pandemic, there's kind of been a logjam of cases. So where I, you know, looking ahead, I see there being more of a need to kind of catch up that backlog and that influx of cases as, you know, when things, I'm being optimistic, when things start to become as they were before the pandemic. The way I see it changing is a lot like the practice of law. A lot of court appearances. In fact, you know, I'd have more appearances during the summer when I'm not teaching. Most were via Zoom or Skype or some form of social media or some form of platform like this. Mm-hmm. So, you know, paralegals are going to be doing a lot more remote working. And with some of the technology that we have in legal research and legal research databases, I see that being the way of the future. You know, I teach legal research and I teach students about books, but my fear is that post-pandemic, we're going to be moving away from using more, you know, traditional books, and a lot of things are going to be online. Same thing with court. You know, I think we're going to continue to appear via Zoom and Skype. And as I tell my students, this is helping you. A lot of my classes are via Zoom. So I'm telling them this is helping you prepare for your job, but this is helping you prepare for your job interview, because interviews are being done with Zoom and Skype and these programs.
Oh, wow. I hope they don't do away with books. I love them too much. You're an attorney, James. As a matter of fact, it's my understanding that all paralegal professors must have their JD in order to teach. This is a silly question maybe, but who really does most of the work in an attorney's office? The attorney or the paralegal? Or can you even really distinguish between the duties of the attorney and the paralegal?
You know, Steve, you asked a question and my students would be triggered and they would know the response that you would get with a question like that. And lawyer answer, it depends. It depends on the law office, the setting. There's some larger firms where there may be 20 associates and they may do the brunt of the research and the writing. There may be a small firm where it's a paralegal and another attorney, and the paralegal may be doing the brunt of some of the research and some of the writing, obviously subject to the attorney approving, because ethically he or she would have to approve the paralegal's work. So the spectrum is unlimited. That's one reason why we have a rigorous program, because we want you to be prepared if you're in that major firm or larger firm, or if you're in that small solo practitioner office. We want you to be able to adapt and have the skills to succeed in both sides of the spectrum. And not to dodge your question and maybe try to tackle it directly, paralegals do a lot of the work. They really do. Some paralegals keep the office going. So they do have a very, very, very important role.
Well, since you deal with paralegals as a professor, have you noticed, is it common for paralegals to go on to law school? And would you advise a paralegal to pursue that pathway?
To part A of your question, is it common? Yes. Common in our program, common in the practice of law. Sometimes and in fact, that was my journey. I started out as an EKU paralegal student, thinking I wanted to be a paralegal, and eventually found a passion and a love for law and wanted to take it a step further and go on to law school. And my story isn't unique. A lot of my students, and in fact, we have a pre-law minor in our department. And a lot of the paralegal students, because two of our paralegal courses, Intro to Law and Legal Research and Writing, are core classes for the pre-law minor. So in the traditional paralegal program, if you just go through and take all the curriculum, you're just missing a couple political science classes and having a pre-law minor. And all the students that are interested in law school pursue that track. Do I advise them? Absolutely. I always tell students, if you enjoy doing legal research and writing, and I'm the legal research and writing professor, you have me in legal research and writing 1 and 2. And by the time you get past me in legal research and writing 2, you're going to know if you would enjoy law school and the practice of law. I structure my classes like a law school class. I use a Socratic method. So even in a Zoom format, doing synchronous education, I'm going to cold call on people, because you're going to get cold called in the office setting. An attorney's going to say, "Hey, Mr. Paralegal or Miss Paralegal, what do you think about this case? Do you think we should take this case?" And you're going to get those quick, rapid fire questions. So I want my students to be prepared for that.
You mentioned that you teach legal writing. What are some of the other courses that students take in the paralegal program?
We have core curriculum classes that they have to take if they're a major. Legal Research and Writing 1, Legal Research and Writing 2. All of our students are required to complete a 280-hour internship. And they can either do that with a practicing attorney, a government office, clerking for a judge. My time at EKU, I actually went through the co-op office and did my internship with the county attorney's office in Madison County, which led to me my first job in graduating in between law school. So we also allow students to kind of pick and choose. They can take a family law class. They can take a criminal law class. Those aren't required. But the one, to pull the curtain back a little bit, in the secret is once you learn the way to think through a problem, to do legal analysis, it doesn't matter the area of law, because you're just applying a different law or different set of facts, to a different law, but you're going through the same deductive reasoning. So I tell my students, criminal law, family law, it's just different types of statutes, but the thought process is identical.
By the way, do you have to be certified to become a paralegal? And if you do, does EKU offer that?
You do not have to be certified. Kentucky does have a state governing body, a state certification. I always recommend it to students, because at the end of the day, we're always have an eye toward, helping a student find a job and job placement. So it's a resume booster. You can do that before you even graduate. Mm-hmm. Do we help prepare for that? Absolutely. Now, do we have, courses geared or prep courses just for the exam? No. But the certification deals with a lot of ethics, and we're keen on ethics in our department because, A, we want to send ethical paralegals into the legal field. 2, with the understanding, as an attorney, I'm responsible for the actions of my paralegals, legal assistants, support staff. So if they're doing unethical things, that's going to blow back on me. So there's that assurance that we want to make sure students are understanding. You can't, as a paralegal, the biggest one is, Aunt Sally may say, hey, you're a paralegal, so you know everything about law, and ask a legal question. And lo and behold, poor paralegal student answers that question. Well, not only has that student violated an ethical rule, in Kentucky, they violated a criminal statute. That's the unauthorized practice of law. So we emphasize, don't do that, and explain why you shouldn't do that. At the national level, there's also a national certification that students can take, and it varies from state to state.
Okay. I'm circling back around a little bit, James, and going to ask you maybe what sounds like a silly question, but do our graduates from our program go on to actually get jobs in the paralegal profession, or do they go into law school primarily? I mean, it seems kind of self-evident that if you get a degree in paralegal that you would be working in paralegal, but I'm wondering if our students go on to other professions as well.
Absolutely. And that's one thing about deductive reasoning and the thinking process is it can apply in a number of fields. We have a lot of students that not only go the legal route, but they may go human resources because there you're looking at policies and compliance and, again, the same thing you do in the practice of law. But to directly answer your question, about 2/3 or 70% of our students have jobs before they even graduate.
Wow.
And upon 3 months of, according to our most recent data, because we do exit interviews with folks that are being hired, their employers, within 3 months, we have a in job placement. So we place a little bit over 90% within 3 months of graduation. The ones that obviously choose law school, aren't necessarily factored into that data because they're pursuing whether it's grad school, law school, or some type of professional school, which some of our students do. They're pursuing something, different, maybe going into a specialized area of law and segueing that. If they're doing government work, they may go through our MPA program and then kind of go into a government setting. So, going back to my outlook for the paralegals, our job placement kind of reflects that as well. And that's why I have the confidence to know that the job title of paralegal is not going away. It's not going anywhere.
Well, that's very impressive statistics. I had no idea it was that high. That's got to be encouraging for your students as they come in and prepare to go through the program, to know that they have a very good chance, more than good chance of getting a job even before they graduate. That's very impressive.
And we see a lot of students, we not only have the minor in paralegal studies and your traditional bachelor's degree, we also have a post-bac certificate where students, who already have a bachelor's degree can come and typically within a year can complete the post-bac certificate program. So they're not taking the full curriculum, but they're getting enough to transition from a different field into the legal field. Sometimes we have people who have worked as, just secretaries or legal secretaries, not really have worn the hat of doing paralegal work. They may try to do it to advance or move up the ladder within their firm. So yes, when you can tout those job placement statistics, it does give students confidence to know, one, they've made the right decision with EKU, and two, that they've made the right decision in career paths, that they're going into a field where they're going to be able to find a job.
Well, one of the unique features of EKU's paralegal program is the fact that it can all be done 100% online. How does that work, especially in the pandemic realm that we're in now, but even prior to that, how is that working out for the students? Do they seem to like online?
They do. The way our program is set up, and I will will qualify a little bit on the fully online, and put the little asterisk, the fine print that we lawyers do. It's all but 9 credit hours. So there are 3 classes that are required, and this is not necessarily EKU's decision. This is coming from the American Bar Association, which actually has accredited our program. So they require that 9 hours have a synchronous component. So before COVID and, pandemic, prior years, we would have what we would call paralegal boot camp. So in the summer, we would bring all the paralegal students for 3 classes to campus, and this is from all over the country. They would go through about 3 weeks, and each week would be one of the 3 required courses. I was fortunate enough to teach one of the courses, so I got to spend 37.5 straight hours with my students. So, going from an online setting where, there's engagement there, but it's passive engagement, to having my students in front of me and having that active engagement, being able to give them a little taste of the Socratic method. That's the highlight or one of my highlights of teaching online. Now, post-pandemic, and the way we did it this summer was we still had the synchronous component, but it was via Zoom. And I, stressed again that not only were they learning material for my class, they were learning about Zoom, how to navigate Zoom. This was still when it was kind of new, because this was early May. In fact, one student kind of wrote me back and said, hey, my attorney was actually working in a law office at the time. Hey, my supervising attorney had me set up her Zoom for her so she could do a hearing. So just the fact going through the residency class gave that student a skill to help with her job in a law office.
The program is approved by the American Bar Association. Can you talk a little bit, James, about the importance of that distinction? I mean, why should that matter to students?
It should matter a lot. The American Bar Association is one of the major credentialing bodies for the practice of law in the nation. To know that you're coming into an accredited school should matter. In fact, in preparation, I had kind of looked at some new statistics we had just released. Our program was ranked 31st in the nation. That was out of almost 200 programs, our online program. That kind of contributes to our high distinction from U.S. News and World Reports. So, our online program, it does give the flexibility of having 8-week classes, 6 weeks in the summer, session 2. So you're able to progress or matriculate through the curriculum faster. But we don't want to get that engagement, that peer-to-peer component lost. So we do emphasize that with all our classes, whether we're using discussion boards, voice threads, some of the technology aspects. With our program and the American Bar Association, you said, yes, you have to be an attorney to teach in the program. Well, if you're not accredited by the American Bar Association, that may not be the case. You may have people who aren't attorneys who are teaching paralegals. And one thing unique about our program is not only are all our professors attorneys, licensed attorneys, we've all practiced law. I still practice law. So we have our ears to the ground. That's able to help network and help our students. I hear from colleagues all the time, hey, I need a legal assistant, I need a paralegal. And I'm able to give that referral directly to my students. So they not only have the security of being able to take classes on their own schedule, they know by being accredited the way we are, that the level of instruction is going to be rigorous, but they're going to be prepared for any job or any obstacle or task they're facing their day-to-day responsibilities as a paralegal.
Well, switching gears here a little bit, James, in my research to prep for this interview, and you've mentioned it yourself here as we've talked, you're teaching an online course this term called Mock Trial. And that just sounds intriguing to me. So how do you conduct, now you mentioned Zoom, but how are you conducting a mock trial in a virtual format? And how do paralegals fall into this mock trial framework, if you will?
And I guess first to kind of give a little context to what mock trial is, and it's exactly as the name would imply. It's a simulated trial. So students portray not only attorneys, but they portray witnesses in a case. So there's not only the legal and the deductive reasoning, creative or critical thinking aspect, there's an acting component and being engaging. Obviously, being two-dimensional like we are this morning makes that a little more difficult. So with mock trial, we not only have students who are interested in law and the practice of law, we have fire science majors, we have education majors, we've had folks, that I competed with who went on to be doctors, teachers. So it's a little something for everyone. This year, the governing body, the American Mock Trial Association, decided for safety purposes, because it's set up a lot like, for any of you basketball fans, a lot like March Madness. We have a postseason tournament. There's no division, so EKU competes against Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Ivy League schools. And we're successful against those schools as well. We're a nationally ranked program. When we transitioned to Zoom, because before this was your typical face-to-face class, we would have a few dozen students, go through. We would travel all over the country, having tournaments. Well, now those tournaments don't require as much travel because we're doing them on Zoom. And again, it goes back to, we're doing trial simulations. In some jurisdictions, they're doing Zoom trials. So as far-fetched and as odd as it seems to have a Zoom trial, that's what they're doing. So this is preparing students for what the future may hold. This is the first year we've obviously transitioned this to online. We do have a few online students, so we've been able to expand what we offer in this format. So it's been great. As far as paralegal roles, again, if it's someone that's interested in law, they're learning about a case. We alternate between a civil case and a criminal case every year. This year, it happens to be a civil case. And, they're learning about, we're in a fictitious state, the state of Midlands, but Midlands has its own case law, has its own statutes. And they're seeing, again, how a trial goes from the intro stages, planning it out, strategy-wise, to actually seeing and defending and prosecuting, or defending and prosecuting the case, because you do both sides. You're the plaintiff and defending the case. I'll admit, with the Zoom format, we're still learning. This is new to us. This is the first time we've had mock trial via Zoom. I think it's been very successful, using breakout rooms. And obviously we're recording this session. We recorded all our mock trial rounds. So, kind of like any other team, you have to self-critique and go back and watch videos. But at the end of the day, that was kind of my plug for mock trial, as well as how it applies to paralegals. It's just detailed understanding of the law, because we teach students everything from evidence to objections to, things that actually happen in a courtroom.
You hit on this a couple of times, James. Let's talk about teaching online a bit. What do you personally enjoy about that modality of education?
Well, you mentioned I'm in my third year, tenure track, but even before that, I was an adjunct here for another 3 semesters. And during that time, I was only teaching online. So when I was developing my teaching philosophy or pedagogy, it was from an online standpoint. I credit you all, because you all have been extremely helpful with, PD2, and, for any, EKU professors out there, highly recommend PD2 in the climate we're in to learn the ins and outs of Blackboard. So learning that has been the highlight, especially now that some of the initial skills I learned, I'm having to use in my face-to-face classes, because I'm doing all my classes either online or online synchronous via Zoom. As far as what I enjoy best, meeting people from different regions, different areas. The one thing with a lot of online students, and, it's not across the board, but typically we see a lot of non-traditional students. You're dealing with a different sector of folks than you are with your, 18, 19-year-old students that are on campus. Typically, non-traditionals are a little more responsible, but the stakes are higher. This may be a second career. This may be a second chance for them. So the seriousness of the student is slightly higher. At the same time, and I can, my wife's in the next room, I can kind of use her as the example. She's a non-traditional psychology graduate student right now. So even seeing her, it makes sense on some of the struggles I know my students have, with technology. She's not a person that had used Excel a whole lot. So I kind of had to help my wife with Excel and, some of the programs. Sometimes students aren't accustomed to Microsoft Word. It may have been a long time since they had to type anything up. So seeing kind of the different profile and the dynamic, I enjoy that. And meeting, like I said, people from, I've had students from West Coast, international, students. As I said, students all over the country, from East Coast to West Coast. So meeting the new students, engaging with them. Obviously, the residency component I love. I love getting the students on campus, or I did love getting the students on campus, letting them see campus, and kind of getting a sense of, school pride, EKU pride. I mean, really embracing it, because you lose a lot of that, in the online setting.
Well, you segued really nicely into the next question I had, and you've already answered it, but the question was, how would you compare and contrast the traditional age student with the adult learner? And I think you've hit on that. The adult learner tends to be, in general, perhaps a little bit more serious of a student, because they do have a lot at stake. Many of them are paying their own way, right?
And I not only, I use my wife as an example. I was a non-traditional student myself. In fact, in the early days of EKU Online, I had quite a few online political science classes. Obviously with the accent, I'm from Clay County, started out at the regional campus there in Manchester, and it was my second chance. I tell people this all the time, but for our regional campus system and online program, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. I definitely wouldn't be a practicing attorney. So.
Wow, that's quite a testimony. Leads me into the next question perfectly. What would you say, James, to a prospective student who were to come up to you and say, Professor Pennington, why should I get a paralegal degree from EKU, and why should I do it online?
So the why EKU, and I'll start there. Why EKU, we're accredited by the American Bar Association, but more than having that designation, as someone who teaches in the department, myself, all my colleagues, we care. We care about you as a student. We want to see you succeed. So you have that component. The online aspect, it's more convenient. It was more convenient for me as a student a few years ago. It's still more convenient now, because again, aside from those 3 classes, you can do the rest of the program completely from home, anytime you want, day or night, as long as you're keeping up with deadlines and such. And as much as anything, this opens doors to anything in the legal field. But I would tell the student, even if you're not thinking the legal field, just having the thinking skills is going to open doors for you in a host of other fields and occupations, from government work to human resources, policy and compliance. I mean it. And the same thing with attorneys. There's some attorneys that go to law school and never step foot in a courtroom, never have an intention to practice law. But the skills that you learn and the way of thinking can apply to about anything.
Well, we've talked a great deal. I've asked you a lot of questions, James. is there anything that I didn't cover or anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today?
You know, I think I've hit the many great features of our program, but if you're a prospective student out there and you watch this and you have questions, my email is jamespennington@eku.edu. If you go to our website, you can get information. You can get linked through, EKU Online Learning. I will tell you the advisors and the support staff over there do a great job, helping you, plan out your schedule, not doing something that's going to put you at a disadvantage or overwhelm you to begin. We set our class pacing up where you kind of get your feet wet at the beginning. It is rigorous. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's rigorous for you. It's rigorous for your benefit. So you have the skills to be successful. So my biggest thing that I want to leave anybody with is if you have questions, please, reach out to us. We're very approachable and we would answer any questions you have. And if we don't have the answers, we'll get the answers for you.
Well, Professor Pennington, it's been a joy speaking with you today. Just know that we appreciate it very, very much. And I wish you all the best in your continued teaching for our paralegal department. Sounds like a wonderful department.
Thank you for having me. And again, thank you for everything that you all do to support us in our endeavors and making our paralegal program successful.